Hello everyone, back tuning into our first video on this Saturday morning. So we're doing the verification for the autumn 2017 forecast for today's first video. We're going to see how the GasOVIS autumn 2017 forecast did. Have a look at the climate averages for the autumn of 2017 at the UK Met Office and verify our forecast, because as forecasters it's always very important that when we release particularly long range forecasts we go back at the end of the season and see how we did, whether that's good or bad. It's important that we always are honest about how the forecast performs. So that's what we're going to do for today's first video. Coming up later on today we'll have a weekend forecast as always on a Saturday, and then this evening we may do another video looking at the next week to 10 days, or perhaps on Ensembles Watch, something like that. If you follow the GasOVIS Twitter feed, it will become clear later on today exactly what we're going to do for our third video. But before we get on with anything else, let's close the door on the autumn of 2017. Really late doing this, so sorry about that if you've been waiting for it. Everything's been late, really, this month. So, just to say that the autumn forecast, quick recap on it. So, we went for a milder than average autumn. We also thought it would be quite an unsettled autumn with above average rainfall, maybe above average incidence of storminess, and we thought that later on in the autumn, probably in November, we may well start to see the jet stream beginning to dig southwards, start to pull some colder air into country, albeit still quite unsettled, but thought November might yield the best chance for a sort of potent cold spell. So let's have a look at the temperature anomalies first of all for the autumn of 2017. So this is the temperature anomaly for the UK set against the old and cold temperature average 61 to 1990, and set against 61 to 1990 average, we see that the autumn of 2017 was indeed a milder than average month, but pretty much all parts of the country. Most places only coming out around half a degree to 1 degree above average, so just a little bit milder than average in most parts of the country. A few places, particularly through parts of Wales and Midlands up into northeastern England, there we see a slightly greater anomaly coming out over 1 degree above average. But all places essentially coming out milder than average for the autumn of 2017, set against 61 to 1990. If we set it against the more modern average, which is also a warmer temperature average, which is 81 to 2010, then we find it's a similar signal but not to the same degree. So overall most places are still coming out average to a little bit milder than average in most parts of the country, set against 81 to 2010. But the deviation isn't as big except across the far west of Scotland. There we're still coming out over a degree above average. But most places are just slightly above average set against 81 2010, whereas set against 61 to 1990, it is a greater deviation. Nevertheless, I think we can say we have more or less had a milder than average spring, so certainly that side of the autumn 2017 forecast worked out quite well. Now, how this was achieved is quite interesting. So I don't normally do this when we verify the long-range forecast, but I'm going to break this down into monthly periods. This is how September 2017 came out with its temperature anomaly set against 81 to 2010, and it was rather a cool month. It was average to maybe a little bit on the cooler than average side, particularly so across Northern Ireland, some southeastern parts of England. Conversely, the northwest of Scotland was a little bit milder than average. Most places average temperature anomalies in September. But then October does this, very warm month in October, set against 81 to 2010. We find that nearly all parts of the country are coming out over a degree above average. Some areas are coming out over 2 degrees above average. Those dark red colours, that's where we're over 2 degrees above average. But most places are between 1 and 2 degrees above average during October. So October was a very mild month indeed. And then November comes out like that, average to colder than average, particularly so for the north. So Scotland and Northern Ireland come out with a colder than average November. by around half a degree to 1 degree colder than average. England and Wales coming out very close to average, and except in far southeast, where again it's a little bit colder than average there. So I think overall the temperature side of the forecast went quite well. Wasn't really expecting that cooler September though. That threw things off a little bit. And the temperature side of the forecast was only really saved by the warm October. But the colder November, I think that did verify, particularly so in the last week or so of November, when it did become really quite cold for a time. As far as precipitation goes, now this isn't quite as good. The Gasworthy's Autumn 2017 forecast indicated not only a milder than average autumn, but also a wetter than average autumn. This is how rainfall turned out, set against 61 to 1990, and it's a mixed bag. So some areas in the country did have above average rainfall, particularly northern eastern Scotland, Northern Ireland, much of northern England, much of north and west Wales. Wetter than average there. But for southeastern parts of Scotland and much of southern and southeastern England and a large part of the Midlands, it was actually a drier than average autumn, set against 61 to 1990. And if we set it against 81 to 2010, very similar story, no real changes there. So again, we've got a lot of regional variation. Much of the south and southeast and the Midlands and South Wales comes out with a drier than average autumn, whereas Northern Ireland, North West England, North and West Wales and northern Scotland, there we come out with a wetter than average autumn, and in southeast of Scotland it's a drier than average autumn. All places in between, so sort of northeast England, northwest Scotland, it's close to average. I don't think we can say that the precipitation side of the forecast was all that good. So we did start off with that expected very mixed and changeable autumn scene in September. We had quite a lot of rain. I think September was quite a wet month. Let's just have a look at September, see how the average came out. And you see that generally September was average to wetter than average across most parts of the country. But then it all went rather wrong in October, with October coming out exceptionally dry, particularly so across eastern parts of the country. That wasn't really expected, that we would have that very dry weather during October. And then November comes out November comes out as a mixed bag, so generally it's average for many parts of the country. It's drier than average, though, still for southeast Scotland, much of southern England. That perhaps a little bit more expected, because what we thought would happen in November is that we get that slightly colder period in November by the jet stream moving southwards. If the jet stream moves to our south, we go onto the cold side of the jet, then we're also going to turn drier, because if it's colder, then it'll be drier. But what we thought would happen is that the first 2 months of the autumn would be mild but unsettled, and then the final month of the autumn would probably be colder but drier. So the precipitation side of things didn't work out that well. The temperature side of things went much better, I think, and we did get that colder spell at the end of November that we thought was a possibility also. So it's a little bit of a mixed bag, but overall I'm reasonably pleased with the Gasworthy's Autumn 2017 forecast. I think if you want to, you can always pick holes in any long-range forecast. It's very rare that you get a forecast that goes absolutely perfectly to plan. The best we can do when we issue these long-range forecasts is sort of give you guidance about kind of the broad patterns that we're expecting. But in terms of specifics, how it all works out on a week-by-week and even a day-by-day basis through that season, that's always very, very difficult, and it is really in the lap of the gods whether you manage to pick the exact pattern perfectly through the season. Occasionally it does happen, but it is very, very rare for that to occur. So overall, I'm reasonably pleased with how the autumn forecast went. I think we got the broad things correct. There are just some things that weren't quite right along the way, particularly that very dry October. But it was also very warm, and that was expected, that we'll get quite a bit of warm weather through the autumn. So that came off, but we thought it'd probably be a wetter month than it was. Anyway, that closes the door well and truly on autumn of 2017. Not before time, because we're well into the winter 2017-18 now. I should have done this 2 or 3 weeks ago. So, as I've been waiting for this verification, sorry about that. But we close the door on the autumn forecast, and of course we're still seeing how the winter is progressing. And we will verify the winter forecast once we get to the end of the season, of course. And tomorrow, the bandwagon moves on again, because tomorrow we will actually have our first seasonal model roundup for the spring of 2017. For the very first time, you'll see what the long-range models are predicting for spring 2017. That'll start the updates then for the spring, and next month we'll start to add in some analogues to that as well. Right, that's it for today's first video. Come back later on today for weekend forecast. The video to that will be on the homepage. It'll also be a written version that you'll be able to get to from buttons at the top of the page. And then after that, we will do some sort of video, either looking at next week's 10 days or maybe an ensembles watch. But certainly there'll be another video coming up late this afternoon or this evening at the website. And that's all for now. Thanks for watching.